My name is Emma, I'm 24, and on my wedding day, my own sister ran off with my fiancé. Before I tell you how I methodically dismantled their lives using nothing but the truth, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. It all started in a quiet, empty bridal suite that smelled of lilies and broken promises. The room was supposed to be a whirlwind of joy, the excited chatter of my bridesmaids, the clinking of champagne glasses, the soft rustle of silk and tulle. Instead, there was only a crushing silence, so profound that the frantic ticking of a small clock on the mantelpiece sounded like a hammer against an anvil. My wedding dress, a beautiful A-line gown with delicate lace sleeves that I'd spent months saving for, stood on a mannequin in the corner. It looked like a ghost, a shimmering specter of the future I was supposed to have just hours from now. The door creaked open, and my mother, Patricia, entered. She didn't rush to my side. She didn't wrap me in a hug. Her eyes darted around the room, flitting over the half-empty makeup trays, the discarded gift bags, the row of vibrant bridesmaid bouquets now starting to wilt. Anywhere but at me. "We'll tell the guests there's been a medical emergency," she announced, her voice tight and clipped. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a decree. It was the first move in a game of damage control I didn't know we were playing. My father, George, hovered in the doorway behind her, his face a miserable mask of awkward pity. He looked like a man who wanted to do the right thing but had long ago forgotten how. "Emma, we're so sorry," he stammered, taking a half-step forward. My mother shot him a look so sharp it could have cut glass, and he faltered, retreating back into her shadow. She turned her attention back to me, her expression hardening into something I knew all too well, righteous resolve on behalf of my sister. "And you need to forgive Tasha," she said, her voice dropping into a tone of grave importance. "Your sister, she's impulsive. She makes mistakes. She needs our support right now, too." Tasha. My younger sister. The golden child. The sun around which our entire family orbited. The one who, at this very moment, was probably in a car speeding down the highway with my fiancé, Michael, her head thrown back in laughter, without a single thought for the wreckage she'd left behind. I looked at my parents, these two people who were supposed to be my staunchest defenders, my unconditional allies. And in that moment, I felt an emptiness so vast it echoed. I felt nothing. I managed to summon a small, tight smile, a gesture I had perfected over a lifetime of swallowing my own feelings for the sake of family harmony. I even nodded. They saw what they wanted to see, their grieving, compliant daughter, the victim. The one who would, as always, absorb the blow and keep the peace. They didn't see the ice forming in my veins. They didn't see the gears starting to turn behind my blank eyes. As they left the room, visibly relieved that I wasn't making a scene, I walked to the full-length mirror. I stared at my own reflection, at the mascara tracks on my cheeks, the hollows under my eyes. I wiped one away with the back of my hand, and my gaze hardened. The woman staring back at me wasn't a victim anymore. She was a survivor, and survivors learn to fight. I pulled out my phone, ignoring the cascade of missed calls and pity-filled texts. I opened a new note and typed a single word as the title, truth. They had absolutely no idea what I was about to do. To understand the cold, methodical precision of my plan, you have to understand the lifetime of training my family gave me. Growing up, there were two daughters in our house, Tasha, the sun, and me, her shadow. Tasha was a whirlwind of charm and drama, and she could do no wrong. When she was 8, she threw a tantrum and broke my favorite porcelain doll, a gift from my grandmother. I was told I needed to learn to share. When she was 16 and failed her driver's test for the second time, my parents hired an expensive private instructor. When I passed on my first try, I was told not to gloat. The biggest sacrifice came when I was 17. I had worked tirelessly on my art portfolio and won a prestigious state scholarship for a summer program at a renowned art institute. It was my dream. I remember running into the living room, acceptance letter in hand, my heart pounding with excitement. My mother read the letter, her smile thin. "Oh, that's lovely, dear," she said, before exchanging a look with my father. But the timing is just terrible. What do you mean? I asked, my own smile faltering. Tasha just went through that awful breakup, my mother explained, her voice laced with that familiar tone of gentle, unassailable manipulation. She's heartbroken. She needs her big sister here this summer. The family needs you. The awful breakup had happened because Tasha had cheated on her boyfriend, but that detail was always conveniently erased from the family narrative. So, I stayed home. I turned down the scholarship of a lifetime. I watched my dreams of studying under a famous painter evaporate into the humid summer air. I spent weeks consoling my sister, who, predictably, was over her heartbreak in a week and had a new boyfriend by August. Meanwhile, a significant portion of my college fund, which I had carefully contributed to with my part-time job, was quietly redirected to pay for Tasha's retail therapy spree. It was just the way things were. I was the responsible one, she was the one who needed to be taken care of. Years later, when Michael proposed, it felt like my life was finally, truly starting. He was kind, stable, and he seemed to see me. He got down on one knee in our favorite park, presenting me with a vintage diamond ring, a beautiful, delicate piece that was part of his grandmother's inheritance. It was perfect. At our engagement party, as our friends and family buzzed around us, I saw Tasha staring at the ring on my finger. It wasn't the happy, admiring gaze of a sister. It was a look of raw, ugly envy, a flash of possessiveness that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "If you don't marry him, I will," she'd said with a tinkling laugh, loud enough for our parents to hear. They just chuckled. "Oh, Tasha, you're so terrible," my mom said, shaking her head fondly as if it were the most charming joke in the world. My best friend, Olivia, who had known me since kindergarten and had a front-row seat to the Tasha show her whole life, pulled me aside later that night. "I'm serious, Em. The way she looks at Michael isn't normal," she'd insisted. "It's not how a sister looks at her future brother-in-law. It's how a predator looks at her prey." I brushed it off, telling her she was being dramatic. I wanted to believe in the goodness of my family. I wanted to believe that the man I loved was mine alone. It was a willful blindness, a desperate hope that would cost me everything. The wedding day itself was a slow-motion nightmare, a blur of escalating horror. It started as a small, nagging feeling of unease. Michael was late. His groomsmen were clustered together, making nervous jokes that didn't quite land. The calls went straight to voicemail. "Probably just pre-wedding jitters," one of my bridesmaids said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Then, my cousin Ryan, who had always been more of a brother to me than Tasha had ever been a sister, came to find me. He was usually the calm, steady one in our family, but his face was pale, his jaw tight. He didn't have to say a word. He just held out his phone. He'd been scrolling through Instagram, trying to distract himself, when he saw it. A friend of Tasha's, one of her vapid party girl sidekicks, had just posted a photo. It was a selfie. Tasha and Michael, beaming, their heads close together, inside an airport terminal. He was holding their passports. She was holding up 2 plane tickets. The caption was a dagger to the heart, and the real adventure begins. #TrueLove #Mentobe. The air left my lungs in a painful rush. The world tilted on its axis, the sounds of the room fading into a dull roar. True love. Meant to be. On my wedding day. The chaos that followed was a masterclass in my family's unique brand of dysfunction. My mother's first instinct wasn't to hold me or comfort me. It was to snatch Ryan's phone and frantically dial the number of the girl's mother, yelling about privacy and demanding the photo be taken down immediately. My father was fumbling with his wallet, asking the wedding coordinator, Jessica, about vendor cancellation policies and potential refunds. Their priority wasn't my shattered heart, it was managing the optics. It was protecting Tasha from the consequences of her own actions. Jessica, a woman I'd only known for 6 months but who had shown me more kindness in that time than my own mother had in that moment, was the only one who looked at me with genuine fury on my behalf. "This is monstrous, Emma," she whispered, her voice shaking with rage as she handed me a glass of water my own hands were too unsteady to hold. "This is evil. Tell me what you need. Anything." And in that moment, something inside me shifted, crystallized. The shock and the pain were still there, a roaring inferno in my chest, but a new feeling was rising through the flames, a cold, clear, diamond-hard rage. I looked at the wreckage of my life, at the people who were supposed to love me scrambling to protect the very person who had destroyed me, and I made a decision. "Cancel everything," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. It cut through my mother's frantic phone call. "Send all the final bills directly to me. I'll handle it." I walked over to the small antique table where my personal things were laid out. I calmly unclasped the pearl necklace Michael had given me as a wedding gift. I slid his engagement ring, the precious family inheritance, off my finger. I didn't throw them. I didn't scream. I placed them carefully in the velvet ring box and snapped it shut. The sound was final. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs. The months that followed were a living hell. I felt like I was attending the funeral of the life I was supposed to have, a life I had so carefully planned and so desperately wanted. The world turned gray and muted. Food tasted like ash. I couldn't sleep, and when I finally drifted off from sheer exhaustion, I had vivid nightmares of Tasha wearing my wedding dress, her face contorted in a triumphant sneer as she laughed at me. I lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. I became a ghost haunting the rooms of the apartment that was supposed to have been our marital home. My friends, Olivia and Ryan, were my lifelines. They operated in shifts, refusing to leave me alone. Olivia would show up with takeout I wouldn't eat and force me to watch terrible reality TV. Ryan would drag me out for long, silent walks, just to get me out of the apartment. They didn't offer platitudes or easy answers. They just sat with me in the darkness. I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez. For the first few sessions, I was numb, recounting events with a detached coldness. Then, one day, after I'd spent an hour listing yet another instance of Tasha's lifelong campaign of casual cruelty, Dr. Martinez leaned forward. "You speak about these events with such resignation, Emma," she said gently. "As if this was your destiny. But what about your anger? Where is it?" "I don't know," I whispered. "I feel empty." "Anger isn't the opposite of sadness," she replied. "It's often a companion to it. What if your anger isn't something to be suppressed or feared? What if it's a compass? What if it's just pointing you toward the boundaries that have been violated, showing you exactly where you were wronged?" A compass. That single word reframed everything in my mind. My anger wasn't a destructive force. It was a tool. It was a map that could lead me out of this desolate wilderness. It was pointing me toward the truth. That night, I went home and opened the truth file on my computer for the first time in weeks. It was time to stop grieving and start building my case. I wasn't looking for revenge, not in the way people think of it. I was looking for accountability. I needed to understand the full scope of their betrayal. I called Olivia. "I need your help," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months. "I need to see everything I missed." For weeks, we became digital archaeologists, digging through the ruins of my relationship. We spent late nights fueled by coffee and a shared sense of purpose, scrolling back through years of social media posts. The signs were all there, hidden in plain sight like a trail of breadcrumbs I had been too blind to see. A comment from Michael on one of Tasha's vacation photos that was a little too flirty, a little too familiar. A tagged photo of them at a concert I was supposed to have gone to, but had to miss because I was working late to save for the wedding. They had been building their own secret world right under my nose. The key breakthrough came when Olivia found a post from a mutual acquaintance at a restaurant, dated 6 months before the wedding. In the background, blurry but unmistakable, were Michael and Tasha, sitting at a corner table, holding hands. Ryan, ever the pragmatist, offered to help in his own way. "Let me do a little digging, Em. Legally, of course. Public records can tell you a lot about a person's stability, or lack thereof. A week later, he came back with the missing piece of the puzzle. Michael was in serious financial trouble. He'd made a series of disastrous investments and was drowning in debt. He wasn't just running away with Tasha, he was running away from his responsibilities. He was looking for a life raft, and Tasha, with her complete lack of morals and a nose for opportunity, was it. Just as this new, ugly picture was coming into focus, a lifeline appeared. My company offered me a major promotion and a transfer to a new city, hundreds of miles away. A few months ago, I would have been too scared to accept. But now, it felt like fate. It was a clean break. I took it without a second thought. As I packed up my life into cardboard boxes, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. I wasn't just running away from a painful past, I was moving toward a future I would build myself. Before I left, I gave Olivia and Ryan a final task. Keep an eye on them for me, I said. Any new developments, any posts, any whispers. I want to know everything. Every new piece of information went into the file. The file was getting bigger, more detailed, a weapon being sharpened in the dark. The next year was about rebuilding, brick by painful brick. I threw myself into my new job, and for the first time in my life, I was judged solely on my own merit, not in relation to my sister. My new, higher salary gave me a sense of independence and security I'd never known. I made new friends, like my colleague Diana, who knew nothing of my past and liked me for me. I even started dating casually, learning what it felt like to be with someone who wasn't constantly comparing me to someone else. I had cut off all contact with my parents after they made one last, infuriating attempt to get me to reconcile with Tasha for the sake of the family. I simply stopped answering their calls. The silence was liberating. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, as I was finishing up a report at my desk, my phone rang. It was an unknown number from my old area code. I almost didn't answer, but a strange premonition made me swipe right. Emma? The voice was thin, reedy, and laced with a desperation I recognized instantly. It was Michael. My blood ran cold, but my hand was steady. I need your help, he stammered, his voice cracking. He launched into a pathetic, rambling sob story. Tasha had left him. But she hadn't just left. She had completely cleaned out their joint bank account, taking every last penny, and run off with his new business partner. The new venture he'd started with the last of his borrowed money was now dead in the water. He was facing total bankruptcy, and his jilted investors were threatening to sue him for fraud. He was ruined. Can you lend me some money? He pleaded, his voice dropping to a pathetic whisper. Just until I get back on my feet. For old time's sake. For old time's sake. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it was breathtaking. I listened to his entire speech without saying a single word, letting the silence on my end of the line stretch out, making him squirm. When he finally ran out of words, the silence hung heavy in the air. No, I said, my voice as calm and even as a frozen lake. And I hung up. The moment I disconnected the call, I swiveled in my chair and opened my laptop. The truth file was no longer just a collection of painful memories. It was a meticulously organized dossier, a weapon of surgical precision. It contained screenshots, financial timelines, Ryan's detailed reports on Michael's debt, and even sworn statements from a couple of disgruntled former employees of Michael's that Olivia, with her surprising investigative skills, had managed to track down. I opened 2 pre-written emails, attached the relevant, neatly packaged PDF files, and hit send. One to the lead partner of the investment firm Michael had been working with. The other to a new contact I had recently acquired. 2 weeks later, my mother called. Her voice was syrupy sweet, a tone she only ever used when she wanted something significant. She wanted to have dinner. To reconnect. To let bygones be bygones. I knew it was a trap, but it was a trap I was more than ready to walk into. I was bringing my own. We met at an upscale Italian restaurant, the kind my parents loved because it was all about appearances and hushed tones. They made excruciating small talk for 20 minutes, asking about my job, my apartment, anything but the elephant in the room. Finally, after the appetizers were cleared, my mother placed her hand over mine on the white tablecloth. I didn't pull away. "We have some difficult news, Emma," she began, her face a carefully constructed mask of maternal concern. "It's about Tasha. She's back. She's pregnant." I kept my face a perfect, placid blank. I took a slow sip of water. My father cleared his throat, taking his cue. "The young man, he left her. It was very sudden. She has nothing, Emma. She's come home to us, and she's a mess." Here it comes, I thought, the grand finale. As her family, my mother said, her grip tightening on my hand, we have a responsibility to her and to her unborn child. You have a wonderful job now, a very high salary. You're stable. Tasha will need support, both financially and emotionally. We need to figure out the logistics of this new family situation. The custody of this situation, so to speak. We all need to pitch in. It's your chance to finally be the bigger person. It was an ultimatum, wrapped in the pretty language of family obligation. Forgive, forget, and open your wallet. The old Emma would have caved. The old Emma would have felt the crushing weight of their expectations and sacrificed her own hard-won financial security for her sister's comfort. But the old Emma was gone. She had died on her wedding day. I slowly, deliberately, pulled my hand from under hers. I placed my phone face up on the table next to my plate. "I don't think so," I said quietly. Their smiles faltered. Confusion flickered in their eyes. "You see," I continued, my voice as calm and dispassionate as a newsreader's, "I've already helped them both." I leaned forward, making sure I had their full, undivided attention. 2 weeks ago, Michael called me, begging for money. It was a very enlightening conversation. Right after we spoke, I sent an email to the lead partner of the investment firm he was working with. I attached a detailed timeline of his financial deceptions, complete with credit card statements showing how he used company funds for his little romantic getaways with Tasha. I believe the term their corporate lawyer used in his letter to Michael was embezzlement and fraud. That's why they pulled his funding and are now suing him for every penny he ever touched. My mother's jaw literally dropped. My father looked like he was going to be sick right there on the pristine tablecloth. "Oh, but I didn't forget about Tasha," I said, turning my gaze directly to my mother. "I did some research on her new fiancé. His family is very prominent, very old money. They run a major charity foundation for underprivileged children. They value their public reputation for integrity above all else. So, I sent a similar package of information to the chair of their foundation, who just so happens to be his mother. I included all the evidence of Tasha's history of manipulation, including copies of texts where she and Michael planned his financial ruin. I guess a woman who conspires to defraud business partners and abandons the man she wrecked isn't exactly the daughter-in-law they were hoping for." The engagement was called off the very next day. Silence. A deep, profound silence. The only sound was the distant clatter of cutlery from other tables, other families living their normal lives. The color had completely drained from my parents' faces. They were staring at me as if I were a stranger, a monster who had suddenly appeared in their daughter's chair. And in a way, I was. They were finally seeing the person they had created through a lifetime of neglect and favoritism, not a doormat, but a mirror, reflecting the full, unvarnished ugliness of their own choices back at them. I stood up from the table, my movements calm and deliberate. "This isn't revenge," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the silence. "This is a consequence. I didn't ruin their lives. I simply held up a light to the truth of what they had done. They ruined themselves." I looked at them one last time, these two people who were my biological parents but who had never truly been my family. Good luck with your golden child, I said. You're going to need it. I placed enough cash on the table to cover my meal and a generous tip, and I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. I didn't need to see their faces to know the devastation I had left in my wake. I had severed the final, toxic tie. I was free. A year has passed since that dinner. I heard through the grapevine, because news like that always travels, that Michael declared bankruptcy and moved back in with his parents, a broken man in his late 20s. Tasha had her baby, a little girl. And my parents are now saddled with the full, unending financial and emotional burden of the daughter they always enabled. They got exactly what they wanted. They get to support Tasha for the rest of their lives. My life, on the other hand, has blossomed in ways I never thought possible. My career is thriving. I received another promotion last month and now lead my own team. But more importantly, I found a different kind of love, a healthier kind. His name is Marcus. He was my quiet, kind neighbor when I first moved, the one who would leave a cup of coffee outside my door on the mornings he could tell I was struggling. Our friendship grew slowly, organically, built on a foundation of shared jokes, late-night talks, and mutual respect, not on grand, empty gestures. He sees me for who I am, not for what I can do for him. He celebrates my strength instead of trying to exploit my kindness. Last week, I was volunteering at a local center for women escaping toxic and abusive relationships, something I started doing a few months ago. I was sharing a bit of my story with a young woman who was terrified of leaving her controlling family. I told her, your worth is not determined by how much you can give to people who only take. Your strength isn't in your ability to endure pain, but in your courage to demand better. And in that moment, watching the hope flicker in her eyes, I understood what true victory was. It wasn't the satisfying crash of Michael and Tasha's lives imploding. The ultimate revenge wasn't their misery, it was my peace. It was building a life so full of purpose, success, and genuine love that their betrayal became nothing more than a footnote, the catalyst that forced me to become the hero of my own story. The final scene of my old life wasn't that dramatic dinner. It's this. Me, sitting here, telling you my story. Whole, healed, and unapologetically happy. I took the broken pieces of the life they shattered and, with my own two hands, I built something stronger, something more beautiful, something that is entirely, completely mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I truly hope it can help someone out there who feels trapped or undervalued. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone in a similar situation? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more. It really does help.